is 7:02 and the board is here, so I want to call our meeting to order and thank everyone for joining us tonight. Um, uh, let's start with a roll call vote. Matt Lowry,
Here.
Kevin York,
Here.
Bill Spalding,
Here.
and Jim Hogan,
Here.
and myself here. So thank you all. The second item on our agenda are the approval of the minutes from January 9th and January 23rd. Let's start with the January 9th minutes. Are there any comments or questions? And take a quick diversion to say hello to Aaron. Thank you for joining us. All right, not seeing any questions. Can we get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes from January 9th.
Thank you, Kevin.
Second.
All right, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Matt. All in favor? Kevin,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and Bill.
Yes.
Thank you, and myself, yes. Second set of minutes is the January 23rd minutes. Any comments? All right. All right, no comments. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Matt. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Bill. And all in favor? Matt,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and myself, yes. So thank you very much. Our third agenda item is to set a public hearing for the self-storage facility zoning, proposed self-storage facility zoning overlay district. It's a proposed bylaw for the upcoming town meeting. So Aaron, I want to open it up to you real quick, just in terms of a scheduling question. Since we have to have a public hearing and we have to give a 2-week notice, I think this means that we need to schedule this for a separate meeting for Tuesday, March 5th. Understand it? Yeah.
So I've kind of laid out what this would look like since we're setting the public hearing tonight, the 13th. I would be able to get something to the item for the 26th, which would give me the 14 days. So you have to post at least 14 days and at least 7 days prior to the public hearing, which is what I did for this as well. So that would bring us to the March 12th meeting.
Okay.
And so I know Attorney McGrail is on this call, the one that is representing the client for the zoning change. I'm not sure if he has any concerns or if he's okay with that timeline. But that's kind of what I have on my calendar as of right now. Because we still, I mean, I could push something out next week for a meeting for the 5th. But just to stay consistent with our planning board, every other Tuesday instead of having a special meeting. That's what I have.
Okay.
A quick question, Mr. Chair, is when or Aaron, when is the deadline for town warrant for us to get it to town council and all that? So my understanding is we're having this public forum for to review so the public has a chance to speak before it goes to town meeting. What is the deadline that we're working back from?
So when talking to Attorney Mullen today and Town Administrator Mayo, I had the same question when it comes to having the public hearing. So currently on the calendar, the warrant is closing March 1st. And my question was to him, do we need to have any zoning article changes before all the articles are due on March 1st, or can we still have public hearings after? And he got back to me basically saying, you know, we just need to be able to present a recommendation at town meeting. So hearings can continue after the warrant closes. But if the issue is, if the motion is different at town meeting than what's originally being requested, we would just have to make sure that we stay within the four corners of anything that would be changed. So we can continue the public hearings from my understanding after the warrant's closed.
Okay,
Okay.
Because even with that March 5th date, it's still after when the warrant closes.
Right, right.
okay.
All
That's
right.
what I was wondering. I knew it was coming up, so it doesn't really matter when we have this meeting as long as it's before town meeting, really. So,
Okay.
right, so it can be our regular scheduled meetings. That's what I was
Yeah.
looking for.
Okay. Does that, and so, I was assuming we have to take a public vote. And as long as we do that, before town meeting, before April 29th, is good to go. Does that logic still apply for the multifamily overlay? Since we're the
As long as
sponsor?
it stays, so again, the issue, is if the motion changes at all and differs from the original request.
Okay.
So with that being said, if something changed before, we'd have to have it before March 1st. But if it's staying within what was
Mhm.
referred to us, then
Yeah.
I think we're good. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense to me. So, okay. All right. Well, that makes our schedule a lot more straightforward. So that's terrific. Good. All right.
So then if there's a continuation for March 12th, we still have, the meeting on the 26th as well of March.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So,
And sorry, Mr. Chair, one more comment on that. While we're
Yeah.
talking about calendars and stuff, our April meetings,
yep.
just to be clear, are we up against election? When's the election day? Are we, because they're on Tuesdays.
Agreed.
Sorry, I don't have that date in front of me.
Yeah, no, so for the calendar, our scheduled dates are March 12th, March 26th, April 9th, and then we had already canceled April 23rd because of the election.
Okay,
So yeah, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 meetings excluding tonight before town meeting.
perfect.
All right. So we have to take a formal vote to schedule this public hearing. So,
Mr. Chair, I think we just set the date. That's
okay,
all.
we just
There's
set
no
the date.
vote.
Yeah,
Okay,
you're
very
just
good.
setting. Mhm.
Okay, all right, good enough. All right. The do we want to also agree to? Well, we'll come back to that. We have 5 minutes before our public hearing on the multifamily overlay district opens.
Mr. Chair, if I could, just a point of,
Oh yeah, Brian.
being one of the petitioners on that zoning amendment. So it has been scheduled for the 12th, just so I can docket that for March 12th.
Yes, sir.
And that schedule is fine with me. I agree with Aaron, that works.
Okay.
So thank you. I just wanted to bring to your attention too, I know another one was referred to you last night. It's a marijuana bylaw.
Mhm.
And that potentially is something that will be unanticipated by the board, but perhaps it might be helpful to schedule that on the same scheduling to give it plenty of time to be heard. Because now that you scheduled the self-storage, that's going to allow 3 public hearings if necessary for discussion of the public and input.
Mhm.
And just scheduling us, all you're doing is scheduling a public hearing. You're not hearing anything. So I would respectfully suggest you might want to consider scheduling the marijuana one tonight also, just so that can be published in the newspaper and the process can start before your board, instead of pushing that towards the end of March or April, getting
Yeah,
close.
no, I appreciate that, and that was our intention to take that up later on in the agenda. So let's we can agree to that now, if that makes sense to Aaron and the rest of the board.
I don't have anything to do with that bylaw. I'm not a sponsor, but I just saw it, referred, and I just for, for the purpose of the town, I thought it would be good to get it on, that's all.
Okay, all right. Well, it's a great suggestion, and we'll give any, I think, since we have if there's anyone on the call tonight related to that overlay district, welcome your feedback now. Otherwise, we can catch it later on in the agenda.
Excuse me, Theo, we also
Yeah.
we need to set a date and a time. So
Yes,
you're gonna have to, excuse me, if we continue the meeting we have, the public hearing we have tonight, we're gonna need a date and time for this one. A
Right.
date and time for the self-storage one, and also if there's gonna be a third one, and also a date and a time. So
Right. Yeah.
we need to at least open them up at that time. We don't, we can continue them later in the evening if need be.
Sure. So the this right. So the
Can you please
self-storage.
mute your-
Yeah, please mute if you're not don't have a speaking part.
Yeah, just yet. So I propose that the public hearing for the self-storage facility zoning by overlay district be opened 10 after 7 on March 12th, and to run 45 minutes. So that would take us to the 7:55, and with the opportunity to extend it if needed.
Yeah, we just have to be clear how much time each person has so everybody can be heard, obviously. And I just want another point, Mr. Chair, is did you name a sub or a co-host for the meeting?
Yes, Jim's the
Okay.
co-host.
Because there are two people that are still not muted that the co-host can actually mute so they don't keep popping up.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. And
I guess, is there anyone on this call that is representing the marijuana overlay district that was referred to us last night from the town council?
I'm not involved in it, but I told Attorney McCarthy, who's a colleague of mine, if something came up, I would speak for him tonight. So I would be that person, I guess.
okay.
He's fine with March 12th.
Okay. So it would, I think we can schedule the marijuana overlay district public hearing for 8 p.m. on March 12th, and to last 45 minutes to 8:45. And should we need to extend or continue, we would do so at that point in time. Similarly, for the MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District that we are going to have a public hearing on tonight, and it being 7:15, I would like to open that public hearing for discussion. And this is the first formal public hearing on the topic. Our general consensus was planning on having 2, but we do have the opportunity to extend it, the discussion beyond that as needed. Just really quick for orientation, I'd like to orient folks to the rules of the formal public hearing. Each speaker is allotted up to a maximum of 5 minutes to speak on the proposed overlay. I'll be the timekeeper, and like Bill and others have said, it's really helpful for folks to keep themselves muted until it's your turn. And when it is your turn, we'd really appreciate you turning your camera on if possible, but certainly giving your name, your address, so that we can know your interest and your standing for comment. Second, process-wise, we're discussing the warrant article as voted on by the planning board on January 23rd. Your feedback about the article, the overlay district, and its wording are critical. Our ability to make wholesale changes, as Aaron alluded to, is very limited at this point in the process. Where we can clarify specific language as it stays within the four corners. If there are wholesale changes, that requires additional discussion. I think our expectation is we're not in we're not expecting to have the ability to do that. In the
Theo, do
course
you
of
mind if I
these
just
public
pause you
hearings.
there for a second? So
Yeah.
just for clarification, folks who don't know, Jim Hogan, the head of the MBTA working group, as well as the vice chair of the planning board. From a process perspective, Theo, the planning board, the purpose of this public hearing is to solicit feedback for the purposes of the planning board providing a recommendation to endorse or not endorse the article as presented on the warrant. And then if changes that would want to be made that would be substantive in nature to the proposed bylaw, that would have to occur at town meeting and cannot be done in advance.
Right.
Just for clarity.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that clarification. Lastly, I think everyone's participation is really important and welcome. And as Jim mentioned, we really want this to be a very open and transparent process. Yeah, I appreciate everyone's taking the time tonight, and as well as the working group and everyone for the effort and the dedication and the commitment to address these issues. I'm going to turn it over to Jim to help frame tonight's discussion, and then we'll open it up to public comment. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Theo. So if people can see my screen. So welcome to the MBTA Community Multifamily Overlay District presentation for the formal public hearing in advance of the anticipated inclusion for the town warrant. So taking a step back, where we are in the process, this multifamily overlay district has been referred to the planning board, to town council, and then back to the planning board by town council, which occurred in January. Right now, we're holding our first formal public hearing with the planning board. The planning board, after when we elect to close the public hearing, will vote to either recommend or not recommend the bylaw and map as part of our report to the town meeting, and that there's a spring town meeting vote, which is scheduled for April 29th, that is anticipated. So that's kind of where we are in the process, that we're getting feedback. The planning board will be taking a vote to either recommend or not recommend this map as part of our presentation to the town meeting. So in terms of for tonight, again, the purpose is to inform the public and then solicit feedback from the public regarding the proposed multifamily district bylaw and the map. Members of the public will be given 5 minutes to provide feedback, and Theo said he'll be the timekeeper, and that the planning board cannot make significant changes to the bylaw or map during the public hearing process. But again, that could occur via an amendment voted on at town meeting itself. So in summary, what are we talking about? This is in 2020, the state passed a law that requires communities that are served by the MBTA to pass a multifamily zoning district, which allows multifamily zoning as of right. So the district that you'll see today will comply with the state zoning requirements. It's been developed and planned to center around Wakefield's downtown. The district would allow as of right multifamily zoning up to 3 stories in height and up to 4 units on 1 building lot. It's an overlay district, so it does not impact the existing base zoning that's in place today. And again, this is a zoning change that would be that's based on requirements from the state for capacity for housing. It's not a production mandate. This is not a mandate where the state is saying that you have to pass or you have to build X number of units. It's just you have to have a zone that could theoretically allow X number of units to be built based on the calculations from the state. So what does zoning capacity even mean? So you can see we put together a slide here where you can see if you had a single family home on a lot, there's an existing one unit on that lot. Theoretically, you go up to 4. Same thing, if you had an existing duplex, you could theoretically in this new, you go up to 4. And then if you had an existing multifamily house on a lot, which there are some, there would be a no change in terms of what would happen. You could think of capacity and these, what we're talking about as a menu for people as they're going through and evaluating what to build in a area as of right. Some background, why are we even talking about this? Why is the state doing this? So essentially, there's a large housing shortage in the state of Massachusetts that's impacting the residents of the community by increasing the housing prices. So we have very high housing prices in Massachusetts. They're accelerating from 1990 to 2020, from a median household sale price of $167,000 all the way up to the $642,000. So it's, they've been almost quadrupled in value. One of the reasons the state believes that this has occurred is that there's very little new supply coming on board. Massachusetts permits half of the new units on a yearly basis as the average US state. And we're in the bottom 10 in terms of how many houses we're permitting in 2022. The state estimates that there's a housing shortage of 200,000 housing units based on the information they provided to communities when this first rolled out. I would say anecdotally, I've heard other people argue that number is actually higher in terms of the number of units that the state is short in order to stabilize housing prices. What does that actually mean for us as a community for Wakefield itself? If you not even going back to 1990, even going back as recently as 2018, we've seen houses and their prices go up 35%. Average house in October of 2018 on Redfin was, $530,000, went up to $720,000 October of 2023. As of February 7th of this year, there's only 6 houses in Wakefield for sale at all. Redfin rates us as a 92 on their competitive rating. So they're basically saying that we're one of the most competitive markets in the country, or amongst that top 10%. So that's why the state is doing this and what the impacts are on us on the local level. If we were to say, if we don't want to comply with the state, we're not interested. We want to go down the route that Milton's going down. Automatically, there are 17 programs that towns and cities that are not compliant would be ineligible for if they don't pass a multifamily district. Wakefield's received a little over $3.5 million for some of these programs over the last 3 years. Some good examples are a grant we received from the Urban Agenda grant for a master plan, which is about $50,000, and some MassWorks grants on North Ave that were $2 million. In addition to the money component of it, there's also this harder to define legal threat from Attorney General Andrea Campbell. And you can see it playing out in the Globe. As you see the headline in this slide, that Milton is toying with the idea of trying not to comply. And the state sounds like they're going to be coming down and having legal action against the town. It's difficult to know what that would look like, but I think everyone can appreciate how that puts the town in a disadvantageous position. In terms of public meetings and presentations, we've had almost 30 meetings going back to 2020, April of 2022 when this first came up, between the planning board, had a number of question and answer sessions in December of 2022, and a number of meetings and presentations to the Zoning Board of Appeals, Town Council, ZBA, and then a number of working group meetings through 2023 to develop the proposed plan, and then going back, soliciting additional feedback from the Council on Aging, Traffic Advisory Committee. So there's been a number of meetings and a number of faces I can see are familiar from a number of these meetings. But there's, been almost 30 meetings and presentations to date regarding this topic. I do want to pause and thank Julie Smith-Galvin from Town Council, Matt Lowry, my fellow planning board member, Robin Greenberg from the Environmental Sustainability Committee, Greg McIntosh from Zoning Board of Appeals, Erin for all of her tireless work as a member of town staff, and Matt Bowen, who are all volunteers who took their time and used it to help as part of the working group to develop this district. Especially for a number of those members who are already volunteering on other boards in the town at this time. So the reasons why this MBTA working group came up with the district that you're about to see is, regardless of people's views on the state and the mandate and what, some people think that the state shouldn't be imposing this requirement. Regardless of all of those arguments, the working group, when we developed this zone, we feel as if the zone that we developed is good for the town unto itself. Regardless of if even you took all the stuff with the state out of this, we think that this is a smart, thoughtful zone of as of right housing that helps address the long-term housing shortage supply that the greater Boston region is experienced, supports our downtown community and our community assets. We're locating future housing near transit, and we think that it's a mechanism that's going to make lower impact development easier, so we don't have to rely on large scale projects for all of our new housing stock that comes online. There can be lower impact housing stock that can help bring housing and address some of these housing shortage supplies, support the downtown business, all while locating it near transit. So putting a finer point on that, housing supply, we think that this is going to build quality housing for families and individuals for all stages and all income levels. It can diversify the housing stock and make it so there's more ways that people can live in Wakefield as they transition from life stage to life stage. People who are electing to downsize have, as we deliver more housing, could have more options to stay in town, but not necessarily stay in place if they choose not to. Or if people want to upgrade, if we can have more housing, it could hopefully alleviate some of the stress on our single family housing stock. We think that locating this new housing around the downtown area is going to help support our downtown businesses. We think that it's going to help increase foot traffic by having people who live near those businesses who'd be more likely to actually go and frequent them because they're going to be close. We think that it could help provide more vibrancy and activity at our community assets. We're locating all of these, we'd be locating these new residents, and hopefully it would make it so, as more people frequent downtown, we can see more and higher quality businesses, stand up their business and thrive in that downtown environment. Locating housing near transit, I hope people can understand that locating housing, if you're going to have more houses built near our existing transit options, is smart. It's just a smart development pattern. You want people to be able to access the bus, access the commuter rail station, while everyone understands that those aren't going to be the only things that people use, and people will have cars. It will lessen the amount of cars in town as new houses are brought online. And finally, as I said before, we think that making it so lower impact development processes are easy here by having this be as of right means that a developer who has a parcel of land, instead of trying to go for something very high and have it be very intense in terms of the development density, by making the barrier to entry lower for lower impact projects, it would hopefully make it so those are more attractive. So some of the things that the working group thought of, and when we were trying to craft this proposed district, was height. Everyone can understand we don't want some giant tower that's going to be completely outside of what exists in town. So this district has the same height as our general residence district. So you're not, if this passes, housing that is delivered from this is not going to be some super tall structure that everyone doesn't understand how it fits into the neighborhood. The density, we're going from the existing zoning in the entirety of this district allows 2 units as of right today. We're going from 2 to 4, which, while it is an increase in the allowable density, it's not like you're going from you're allowing 2 units to 100. It's something that I like to call a gentle density, where you're going from 2 to 4, and there's already a lot of multifamily housing, which is consistent with this the neighborhood character where we're proposing this. So you're making it so there's places in town where there's already some of this housing. You're increasing it in a manner that is going to look and feel similar to what exists already. We maintain local control. The way that we designed this bylaw and this district was that the planning board is still going to have site plan review. And so that site plan review will allow us to make sure that nothing that is outside of the intent of this law ends up being built. And again, transit options, locating this district near the downtown makes it so if we had located this in other portions of the town that were under evaluation at various points, people would have to get in a car and drive to our downtown to frequent those businesses, or get in a car and drive outside of town to frequent businesses that would not support our economic development in our downtown. So those are some of the things that we were thinking about as we had the push and the pull of what this wanted to look like. So that's the why. What are the actual how? What are we actually having to do? So the district that we came up with, some of the constraints that we had from the state was we had to have a unit capacity in our district of 1,696 units that would be theoretically allowable if you took all the units that existed today and zeroed them out. What could you actually go up to? The minimum land area had to be 36 acres, which the only way you could do that is by having super dense districts, because you had to meet that 1696, and that you had to have a minimum density of 15 units per acre. The district had to be 75% within the half-mile radius from the 2 commuter rail stations. And so we had to, there was, I think some people have called it a cookbook of different things you had to use in order to validate that the district would actually meet the requirements. So in order to validate that, one of the things that we had to use was this tool called a compliance model that was provided to us by the state. And they said, you have to use this compliance model in order to validate that you're going to comply with the law. So in that model, you had to be, you determine the district boundaries, and you had to focus on where you thought this would want to go. You had to define all these dimensional requirements, which people don't need to get into the weeds on, but things such as how tall the buildings were, the different setbacks, the units that were allowable all fed into it. And then after that, you had to ensure that all the policies that we came up with in the bylaw had to comply with the law. And we actually had to have a couple, preliminary reviews of the state that are still ongoing to validate all this, but we've had a number of conversations. We feel very confident. And then we had to enter all this information into the compliance model and then test different iterations. So there's been a lot of work going into this. Big props to Aaron Kokinda, who's been running it after the contract that we had with a consultant from the state expired. But there was a lot going into this in terms of the different things that we had to push and pull. But just from hard numbers, what are some of the things that we're looking at? The proposed district that we're looking at has a housing unit capacity count of 2,359 units compared to that minimum of the in the current built, like the houses that exist today, there's 1,641 units. The units per acre is 16 compared to the current, what exists today is a little under 11. And then the zone size we're proposing on the 145 acres that's laid out here. In terms of the zoning, this zoning district would allow the 4 units. In general, the zone that you're going to see has general residence and business, which has 2 families as of right today. And then age restrictions are not allowed in any of these configurations. So the existing dimensional regulations, again, 4 versus the 2, 3 stories is allowed, or, in the proposed district as well as the existing zone. In the minimum lot size is 4,000 square feet compared to 8,000 in our general residence or 4,000 in our multifamily mixed use overlay. Height is consistent amongst the two of them. Parking is materially consistent, and setbacks are copy paste. So this is the district that we've been talking about, and that was voted on by the planning board at the recommendation of the working group, and has gone to town council and been referred to back to the planning board. And so this is the map that we're anticipating will be presented to the town at town meeting. You can see that it's centered between North and Main Street, and then it has sections that extend on either side of it, but it's really centered on our downtown area, centered on the commuter rail station at Wakefield, at the Wakefield Center, as well as the bus line that goes down Main Street and the bus line that goes down North Ave. Just to orient people, this map right here shows our existing zoning that exists today. The yellow is a general residence where 2 families are allowed as of right. Red is our business district. White is where our single family homes are. That's that zoning district. And the dashed blue line is an outline of the proposed multifamily district that we're talking about tonight. So just for some development context, the proposed district already has a number of 3 and 4 unit homes that exist today. So you can see there's a number of examples on the slide, as well as existing multifamilies on Pleasant and on Richardson Street, where you can see what a 4,000 unit on a 5,000 or 4,000 square foot lot looks like. And down on Wakefield Ave, there's a 3 unit on a 5,000 and a 4 unit on a 6,000, just to get a feel of what do some of these things look like. I think what we anticipate is there was this building completed in 2022 on Chestnut Street, 3 units on the 7,000 square foot lot. With the passage of this, we anticipate that these are the types of developments you would end up seeing. But you can see from this map, overlaid all those units that we just looked at in depth, where they're located. You see a lot of them are located in these districts. And that's housing that exists today. Some frequently asked questions that we get regarding this district. Is this a mandate for new housing production? No, it is not. The state's requiring zoning that allows for new development to be created, but doesn't set a quota or production mandate. It doesn't impact our 40B status. Not going to impact our 40B status until at least 2030. The next time the Wakefield's total housing inventories measures the 2030 census. And until then, any new units delivered under the multifamily district will not impact any of the 40B calcs. Why did we go with Wakefield Station instead of Greenwood? Essentially, what it comes down to is the land that we identified that we thought made the most sense was the existing lots in Greenwood were too big, which means that in order to hit that density requirement, we would have 5 or 6 units as a right, but didn't feel right with what exists in Wakefield today. We thought that this proposed district, based on the existing housing stock around Wakefield Center, was more appropriate for that neighborhood character. There were other locations around Greenwood we evaluated that were a little farther away from the Greenwood station, but we thought that based on the unit mix of those are all existing single family homes almost exclusively, as well as locating some of those homes away from the transit options, didn't feel like it was the right mix and the right feel compared to where we ended up with the existing proposed district. Can the units be age restrictions? No, you cannot make it so this is only senior housing, for example. It's explicitly denoted in the state law that's not allowed. Will these be new units, be rentals, or condos? I think the answer is it depends. The proposed district does not require home ownership. New units permitted under the district will be condos or rentals depending on the homeowner or the developer who does the project. And does the district require affordable housing? It's probably one that we get the most. It does not, unfortunately. To include an affordable housing component, Wakefield would have to allow up 10 units as of right, which just felt way too big for our community. And so we didn't think it was appropriate. The towns does still have an 18% inclusionary zoning bylaw for larger mixed-use family developments that are permitted under different development mechanisms that will not be impacted by the passage of this multifamily district. So I know that was a lot to take in, especially for those who haven't heard any of this before. I'm more than happy to answer any questions and to open it up for public comment. As a reminder, raise your hand. If you're called on, please turn your camera on, state your address where you live, and then you'll have 5 minutes to provide public comment and feedback. So I think the first person I'm seeing is Don Dusenberry. Don, I don't think I can hear you. I don't know if you're having some audio issues.
He's unmuted. Yeah, we'll
Don, I think while you get your audio issues figured out, we'll pivot over to is it Tiana Roberts?
Hi, yes, Tanya Roberts. Thank you for hearing us today. So actually, I live at 11 Murray Street, which is obviously in the proposed district. We also own a multifamily on Albion Street. We moved from there. And one of the thing that drew us to Murray Street was the historic value of the home. One of the things that I was most upset about when I saw this map is that Wakefield doesn't have a historic district, but like a lot of these homes that are in this blue area are homes from the late 1800s. And when you start chopping them up into a 4-unit, it's going to lose the character of the home undeniably. That is something that will never be able to be built. That character will forever be gone. So that was my biggest concern, is that blue area is really the heart of Wakefield, the craftsmanship, the homes that are there. Not only that, I was really confused about why you wouldn't include, and I'd love to hear the answer to this, Foundry Street, which has a cruise ship, because I did look at Winchester, their solution to this problem, and they chose one of their huge multifamily areas already, and they included that in there to get those numbers down. So why I don't see Foundry Street, why I don't see Bartley Street, which does have some of those multifamily units already on it, is really confusing to me, and why we stop at the newer homes on the left side of the circle of the map that don't have historic value is really confusing to me as well. Why does this blue zone have to be so big? And if we do include some of those multifamily areas that are already there, would that bring that area, that acreage down to where we would need it to be in order to fill that zone? So one of the things that you said is just lowering the impact that it has on the existing community. So I think that looking at areas, that triangle, that Albion Street, North Ave triangle, where you do have a lot of industry, a lot of multifamily homes, Wakefield has already seen such a change. We have these giant multifamily units coming up everywhere that you possibly see. And why we aren't including those areas is something that I would like to hear. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, I think maybe this is something that I'm realizing we should add to our frequently asked questions. So just for people to understand how the law works and why we made some of the choices we did, that area you're talking about around Foundry Street and North Ave, the reason why those weren't included is because they actually don't help us in terms of reducing the acreage we're talking about, on the basis that you only can get credit for 4 units for every lot you're including. So you can see that the Foundry Street, basically that building lot is very large. So you only get credit for 4 units. So based on that, what happens is that it drives our density way down. And so that would make it so we would have to either allow more units on existing lots, or we would have to create more increase the area in order to offset that density going down.
Have you guys looked at what other towns have done? Because Winchester did include their giant multifamily structure in their planning.
So
And
so we took a look at what some other communities did, and some communities, made other choices than we did. But one of the things that we thought didn't make sense is it didn't make sense to go for a smaller district with more density. We thought going with a lower density over a larger area. That was kind of the trade-off that we made.
Saying adding that giant cruise ship does nothing, doesn't reduce the area at all.
You get credit for 4 units for
that
including
whole
that
area?
whole area. So that
I'm
drives
just
your
curious
density
how
way
they're
down.
able to get away with such a smaller area when we're not.
Jim, do you mind if I chime in and maybe I can answer
Yeah.
a few things too? So thank you so much for your feedback. We greatly appreciate it. We did talk about the Foundry Street area when we first met, or the group did, and I'm kind of the background person that was working with the consultant, Ezra. And there's a number of factors that also play into that when it comes to excluded land. And so the mapping that we have, there's certain parcels within our community and communities throughout the Commonwealth that are excluded that will not be counted towards our total capacity due to wetlands, also restricted open spaces, and almost half of Foundry Street we would not be able to include due to some Title V and surface water issues due to Crystal Lake. And so that eliminates half of Foundry Street. Also, too, I think something that we do already have in place in town is our 19032, which is a special permit for the multifamily mixed use. And I think we talked about this in this group also, is that it is a special permit. So it goes through a more rigorous process to allow those sort of developments, and where we could push for more mixed use within that area and have more, I don't want to say control, but have more decision, be part of the decisions that are made when it comes to what these buildings are going to be looked at. So those were some part of the discussions as well, if we did decide to go higher density there, but there are a lot of other factors that play into that as well. And one of them was half of Foundry, unfortunately, we would not be able to include for Title V and surface water issues.
And is there any thought to the history of the homes in that area?
So
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Wakefield has an existing demolition delay bylaw related to historical homes, and this would not impact that bylaw and the enforcement of said bylaw. So thank you for the feedback. I do want to make sure that we have enough time for other folks. So I want to just pivot over to I think it's John Sophia.
And John, you're still muted.
Yep, there. How's that?
Good
There
to
you go. Thank you.
Okay. I just want to make one thing clear, that compliance with the state mandate is not synonymous with accepting the proposed working group's overlay district. Am I correct?
So
I think I am correct.
And John, what's your address, by the way?
6 Whittemore Terrace, Wakefield, Mass.
All right.
And in your presentation, Mr. Hogan, I mean, the number of times you said, we think, I counted 6, and I said, I forget it. And I also love the phrase, we hope that people can understand. Now, you've had 3 public hearings already about this. Overwhelming rejection of the concept of more overlay. Yet, apparently you, in your words, think it's smart to basically disregard all the public opinion you've gotten so far. You say you want it, but you really don't. Okay? It's just, well, we checked the box for public opinion. But essentially, we see things, our version of smart, and we hope people can understand, et cetera, et cetera. I just think it's an egregious display of arrogance on the part of your group to not have an alternative. Hey, let's have 2 different possibilities. Possibility A, possibility B. Those are the 2 overlays. How about that for a choice? And I can only say that I hope that this is rejected at town meeting, because this is what it deserves. Once again, compliance with the state mandate is in no way in no way accepting what you people have proposed. Thank you.
Okay, I see someone with iPad as their name. If you could unmute and put your state your name and your address.
Hi, Jim. Joe Tavano, 23 Eden Street. I do appreciate all your hard work you do for better or for worse. Couple quick questions. So this is mostly over the general residence district. Actually, looks like it's pretty much 100% over the general residence district. That being said, the overlay goes through all other requirements on the dimensional regulations stay the same. Still need 80 feet of frontage. Still need 80 feet of frontage, 15 feet setback, 10 on the side and 10 on the rear. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's essentially the same setbacks, or sorry, not essentially. It is the same setbacks as the general residence.
Okay, what about parking? If you're going
Parking is, so the existing parking for all developments in town is 1.5 units of parking for 1 and 2 bedroom homes and 2 for 3+. The working group elected to go with a more straightforward version of that, where it'd be 1.5 for each unit of housing.
that's fine. So someone changes one of these to a four unit, they have to have 6 off-street parking spaces.
That's correct.
Okay, so the other issue with the district, the general residence district, which I happen to live in, it's already overly crowded. We have many, obviously many 2s, but we have many illegal 3-family and 4 families. We already have a parking issue with people parking on the sidewalks. I mean, I'm not even talking street parking on the sidewalk on Pleasant Street. If you look at the end of Pleasant and Eden, which doesn't go, which is not enforced. So we're taking the district that's already the most dense, and we want to increase that density. Is that, would you agree? We're increasing the density, the most district currently?
We are providing a zoning overlay over the area of the town that has the most of the houses that are similar to the houses that will be allowable as of right if this passes.
Right, but it also happens to be the most dense district. It's not overlay in a single family district. It's overlay in an already dense, overcrowded, over abused district as far as, well, not as I'm concerned, as anybody who drives around and looks will see the off-street parking, many illegal apartments. It's just going to create more burden on this district. Also in this district, as I think it was Tanya stated, there's a lot of historic homes, and I know they're protected in the beauty and the demolition bylaw. I mean, there's ways to get through that. And you also made it pretty clear the goal is to increase future housing, not necessarily ownership, not necessarily rental, but in this district, which is a high rental district anyway, this is just going to increase rental. I can't imagine, maybe you'll get, maybe you'll get a few condos, but I would think people are going to be looking to change 2 to 4s. If they got illegal apartments, they're going to try to legally change them to 4s. It's just going to increase it's going to make a tough area worse. That's all I want to bring to your attention. All I want to state.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Don, did you get your audio issues sorted out? Still can't hear you if you're talking.
Yeah. Don, we suggest exiting and calling in on your phone.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, that's still being sorted out. Pivot over to Bronwyn Della Volpe.
Hi, good evening, Brown Delavolpe, 8 Cyrus Street. I would like to mention that previous speaker had mentioned Church Street as not being a historic area. It may not be an official officially designated historic area, but Church Street has, she is correct, a lot of the historic homes there, and I think it's unconscionable to include that area in the catchment area for the overlay district. It's I don't know how anyone could say that that is good for the town. There was I can't say it was a Victorian, but there was an older home on Church Street just a few years back that the owner promised he wanted to raise it and build a new house, and he promised up and down that it would fit in with the neighborhood, and it doesn't. It's this giant red towering duplex that detracts from that entire neighborhood. It never should have been allowed. So I'm just saying that, you know, we say all the nice buzzwords, low impact and all of that, but it actually doesn't mean very much, because we have plenty of history to see the actual impacts of what's going on in town. And just to educate people about the demolition delay bylaw, I've been in town for almost 40 years. I have seen the demolition delay bylaw enacted a couple of times. It does virtually nothing except delay for about 6 months. So if you think that that is really any real protection for our historic places, please change your approach, because it is not. So don't rely on something like that to think that there are some protections in place, because there are not. Having said that, I do appreciate you reiterating all the reasons why you think this is a great idea, but I've yet to hear a single rational reason, other than it's our opinion, why this is good for Wakefield. And I agree with the previous speaker. I think it is egregious that this committee seems to insist that they know better than the vast majority of the Wakefield public that has weighed in on this. And the optics of that, frankly, are really, really not okay. They're not good. They're not helping. And I think the concept of public input is check off the box. So can someone explain why this committee insists, despite the public outcry over expanding the overlay district beyond what the state mandate requires? Can you explain why you continue to insist on that? And please don't use words like, I think it's good for Wakefield. Please use some specifics as to how it helps Wakefield. And if you say it increases our housing, well, that's okay. That's a nice reason. But if you look at the housing over the last 10, 12, 15 years in Wakefield, Aaron can tell us it's approaching 2,000 units in Wakefield. 2,000 additional housing units in Wakefield. And what has that done? Has that driven down costs? No. Has it helped people buy new homes? No. What has it done? So adding a few and a few and a few and a few more is not getting us where we actually want to be. And in the meantime, we're deliberately harming neighborhoods that don't need this kind of development, and our historic areas. I mean, Wakefield unfortunately has a very bad reputation for not being proactive, giving serious consideration to its open green spaces and its historic. The preservation attitude just is not there in town, and I think that's why people are getting pretty upset that they're not being heard. So Jim or someone else, if you could give me some specifics of why you think that expanding the minimum catchment area is a good thing for Wakefield. And thank you.
Hey, Jim, I don't know, do you mind if I answer this?
Go for it, Matt.
Okay. Thank you, Bronwyn. As you know, the working group was tasked with coming up with a overlay district because it's required by the state. So working with the parameters that were given to us, we looked at a couple different areas. Also the parameters are, it had to be centered around one of the commuter rail stops that we had. So we had Greenwood and then we had Wakefield Station. We looked at Greenwood because of the size of the lots, it just didn't work. So that shifted back up to Wakefield Station. We could have kept most of the districts centered just around Wakefield Station. And if we had excluded the parts between the historic homes, unfortunately, on Chestnut Street and those streets, we would have shifted it further from downtown, which would have put the burden more into a single family zone or centered on just one general residence zone right at the station.
Well, Matt, I understand that's about placement, and I do appreciate that. And I appreciate that there are many, many moving pieces in a very complex puzzle. I do appreciate that. However, my question was specifically,
And excuse
why
me,
are you doing more?
I'm trying to answer that.
Okay.
So what we thought, and we still believe, is that shifting this district towards downtown to be able to provide an opportunity for businesses downtown, to center people around downtown and the commuter rail and the buses would be the best way for us to comply with what we have to comply with. So that means expanding the district somewhat towards downtown. That's why we have expanded it slightly downtown. Now, if people look at what is the requirements of what we place that were basically imposed on us by the state, a lot of these lots cannot support 4 units. So therefore, they will not be built out to 4 units. Some of them may have 3, and many of them aren't going to have any more units than there are currently right now. All that this does is afford the homeowners there the opportunity to do something with their land. It's giving them more rights with their land. It's not giving a developer more rights unless someone sells them their property, which is their right to do. So this is why it has shifted and has expanded towards the downtown, because we're trying to bolster the downtown area where there's more opportunity for people not to have a car. And frankly, if it is filled up with a lot of cars down there, so at some point, there's going to be a maximum. So the market will drive what can be done down there. And this is not something that's going to happen overnight. It's going to be years before this is built out.
Now, I understand your reasoning, and thank you. However, this mandate is not about driving business to the downtown. It's about housing near the public transportation. And so that's why I think that this working group has taken upon itself to add a whole nother layer and dimension, even though it would appear that that would make certain amount of sense. But without that, driving business downtown is not the goal of this state mandate. I mean, none of us like to be told what to do, but then to take the mandate and then expand it because you feel that it would help the downtown, to me, in this circumstance, is not a good enough reason, frankly.
Well, that's fine, but you asked for the reason of why the working group chose this. I'm giving you the reason of why we have done that.
And why was it not expanded into Greenwood more?
Because of the size of the lots, it would have lowered our density number. And again, there are a lot of different factors that we had to hit with this. It's not just a number of lots, but it's number of units per square footage for the lots. The lots in Greenwood were larger. So therefore, we would have to have an even larger district, which is what, again, the working group, working through the numbers, decided was not best for the town. So that's why we decided to leave out Greenwood at this point.
And I would
looking
add, it probably does make sense in a separate effort to have rezoning or zoning evaluated around Greenwood for a district similar to this, but without the requirements and all the hoops you have to jump through for the state. But that was outside of the purview of the working group. And therefore, even though that would be a good idea, that's not part of this. So
But doesn't-
what the working group did is the working group took the requirements from the state. It told us as the working group went through the numbers, that Wakefield Center was the commuter rail stop that made the most sense for the lowest impact on the town. And then the working group tried to make if we're going to have to do something from the state, make it the best, most thoughtful zoning for the town and proceed. And I would note, the working group did this, but the working group referred this to the planning board, and the planning board ultimately voted 5-0 as well. And the planning board, which is the body in the town that's responsible for planning and zoning in general, the planning board also agreed unanimously with the conclusions of the working group.
Oh, okay, and that's fine, but Matt had said something about, Greenwood and lot size. Well, how does lot size fit into this? Because if you're doing an overlay district, then it doesn't matter lot size, because if someone lives in the overlay district, then they can build by right. So how does the lot size work into it?
The lot size matters because of the specific requirements of how the state compliance model and the numbers you have to put into the state compliance model and how it impacts that minimum density. You have to take the lots that exist as they exist today and run the numbers based on that. So if you include lots that are bigger in Greenwood, that means that you'd have to have more units allowed as of right in order to meet the minimum density.
Okay, thank you very much.
So, yeah, thank you. And I'd like to just pivot over to the next person, just to make sure we have time for everyone else. I see the next person who has their hand raised is Julie. Please unmute yourself and turn on video and state.
Hi, Julie Scott, 4 Central Street. I have a couple points to make. I would like to tell everybody here that at the December 19th Planning Board meeting, our town administrator, we don't have a mayor, but we have Steve Mayo, our town administrator, was discussing how to make this more palatable to the residents, and he was expressing a need to make it passable at town meeting. Steve specifically said that he personally thinks that adding a different area of town would help a little bit. That hasn't happened, and Steve is our paid leader of our community, and it's unfortunate that the group didn't listen to Steve. My second point to make is that at the Traffic Advisory Commission meeting in December, Lieutenant Anderson was having a discussion with you guys, and it came to the conclusion that, quote, nothing is there to stop a developer to ask for a Nahant Street type of project in this area. So when we're doing discussions about this overlay district, on top of the dealing with the overlay district itself, there could be other entities of development that enter into this that we need to be thinking about. So on top of the overlay, there will be the type of development that we're seeing all over our community, specifically on Nahant Street. And that was Lieutenant Anderson, who's a traffic expert. That was a concern that he expressed. He also expressed at that same December meeting that parking is, no matter how hard we try, and this is a quote, no matter how hard we try to make Wakefield more walkable, for example, EV chargers, bike racks, they are bringing vehicles with them. We have to hold them to our parking bylaw. It's not trending, that there are fewer cars. So when you talk about 1.5 cars per unit, I'm real concerned about 3 bedrooms, maybe even 4 bedrooms. So that was a real concern for Lieutenant Anderson about parking task advisory. And the fourth issue is we have college kids home from college students. He mentioned college students visiting nurses, just regular visitors to the area, as we already lived through it. Eaton Street was mentioned earlier, how congested it is. There were real concerns about parking and parking and parking that were expressed by the Traffic Advisory Commission back in December. And I don't see how many of their concerns are showing up in this plan. And unfortunately, they were never told that maybe there could be another map devised that would include parts of Greenwood, when in fact in Greenwood, we have 2 train stations we could be thinking about, the Greenwood station and the Melrose station, because when we're looking to be within a half mile of a train station, I believe the Melrose station would qualify as well. I hope that this does not pass at town meeting. I appreciate all the work you've done, but I look at this map and you guys know, I wrote to you today. I've been to every meeting and the map's still the same. I don't see where our public input has changed anything, and it's a disappointment. So I look forward to working together to devise a better map, one that supports the downtown businesses of Greenwood. I don't hear any concern about the downtown Greenwood area. That's a downtown too. I was born there. I started my life there. And it's very similar, and I'm 62 years old. They need our support. We don't have just one downtown. We have 2. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to pivot to Michael Barrett. Please unmute, and if you could turn your video on and state your address before you start talking.
Sure, Mike Barrett, 5 McDonald Farm Road. I see that, the overlay district is, excludes, the North Ave corridor, the Albion Street corridor. I think by including those, you could eliminate some of the fringe areas that, have much more historical significance to the town, the Church Street area. In some of those, type streets, I understand that, via special permit, a person could petition to do a residential component to a small development. But I think a by right area in those areas would be less impactful to the town than by right on some of the fringe areas that have more historical significance. So I do, request that the committee do kind of review that. I think there's been a lot of good comments about public input and, potentially the lack of acknowledging some of the input. You obviously have done a ton of work with all these meetings and putting together all this input, but I do think if you do want something that's passable, you may want to reconsider the map that's drawn, and I would include some of those other, business type districts. You will be giving up some control on the special permitting process, but I think you may, pick up some public input that might be favorable to the process. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you for that. I do want to, before I pivot, just do one, realizing that we didn't go through it and explain the rationale. So as you noted correctly, there is a number of units or lots that have been excluded along North Ave, Albion, and Main. The thought process behind that is that those are commercial corridors, and so it did not feel, or the working group had the position that having those commercial corridors in a residential overlay district where 4 units as of right would be potentially an easier way for someone who could buy a piece of land there to develop it would not be in the long-term interest of the town, because that could potentially make it so you would not have commercial on our commercial streets. So the thought is that you want your commercial streets to remain commercial and not have 4 units of housing as of right allowable, and essentially force it to go through the special permit process that would allow more commercial or mixed use to be the development pattern in the long term.
Yeah, and I think that's where you're short-sighted. You're thinking that, some level of residential development on some of those quarters would be detrimental to the town. I think a lot of townspeople would feel that development along the lake and on some of the historic districts would be far more impactful in a much bigger mistake long-term than to have a few small scattered residential developments up and down Albion Street, Main Street, or North Ave.
Okay.
But thank you again for your time.
Thank you for your time. The next person I see is Karen King.
Hi, I've unmuted myself. I'm Karen King. I live at 91 Cedar Street and have been here for almost 40 years. A couple of things that I want to bring up that no one has mentioned is the changes. I mean, the state of Massachusetts put into place 40B and then came up with 40A. This neighborhood that you have in this defined circle has likely seen more changes in the past 5 years than any other part of Wakefield because of 40B. So the Foundry Street developments and all of the traffic changes that has brought to this neighborhood, unprecedented. Many people on this call may not know that Wakefield took about 35% of Cedar Street, and now to park on the street that I own a house on, I have to pay the town for a parking sticker because it's considered downtown Wakefield. Across the street from me, Cedar Gardens, we talk about the need perhaps not to have a car by adding more units. Cedar Gardens is short 18 parking spaces that park on the streets. Brookbend Condos on Albion is 1 car per unit. All the rest of those cars park on Albion Street or Cedar Street. We are besieged here with cars and vehicles that have not been accounted for. Secondly, you put a lot of emphasis on, adding additional units that we do not need to add in an area where people could walk downtown. But as the planning board, maybe more time could be focused on downtown, because currently there are very few reasons to go to downtown Wakefield. We continue to lose more retail opportunities that are going to other towns. And it just seems like there's not a lot of emphasis on improving the downtown. Traffic on Albion Street morning and late afternoon, you just can't go anywhere. And that's if the train gates are working. If the train gates aren't working, as one of the police officers said to me recently when I was sitting there waiting to get to North Ave, the cops could sell popcorn here. That's how prolific the traffic problems are on Albion and Prospect as well. The planning board, I appreciate the time and effort. I appreciate the fact that 40A is going to cause us to have some units built, but this west side of town has been so grossly impacted already by what has happened. You're causing many people to say it might be time to sell and go elsewhere. And that's like really sad for someone like myself who's lived here 40 years and loved living in Wakefield. I have given hours and hours of volunteer work and funds to all of the wonderful nonprofit organizations in this town. But you guys need to start listening to those of us who are living here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. King.
Thank you. The next person I see is Jane. If you would unmute and turn, yep.
Hi, Jane McConnell, and I live at 59 Cedar Street, which is directly across from Auburn. And I would like to also voice my concern about the number beyond the requirement, because as has been stated, there has been a lot of impact in our area. I know consistently we're being told that there isn't any traffic impact, but I think people need to come and watch what happens when a train arrives and the line on Albion Street goes almost beyond Jordan Ave. Every time that the train comes, if it's a double train, there's an impact. The same on Prospect Street. They've changed the flow of traffic on this section of town as well. Partly the MBTA, I guess, with the Chestnut Street reversal one way, impacts the traffic on Cedar Street, especially. We get more trucks, we get more volume cars. Pulling out of our driveway is very difficult. At pulling into the driveway, because we have to back in order to be able to get out now into the traffic that comes. I've lived here 37 years, and it's the past 8 or 9 years, each time there's been something built or added, we take the hit. It's very discouraging to hear that you as a committee feel that you can or have the ability on our side to add more when we struggle with parking. We struggle with, I too have to pay if I want to park a car in the street. And I'd love to know how many other streets that happens with in town. They don't come around and move cars in the snow. So sometimes I'm shoveling 6 feet into the road because there's been a parked car left and DPW doesn't call it in. I could go on and on with the issues that have developed with the traffic flow here. I have a real concern with the overlay circle and seeing that the area that we struggle so hard with to now without adding anything. Part of me feels that because we have some multifamilies in our area, that's working against us because you want to add more multifamilies to our area. I don't know why we can't spread that out a little more. Why does it have to be so condensed to the same area? It doesn't make sense to me. I feel that the majority of the planning board, the town council, the working board, none of you live in this overlay area. I believe there are 2 people between all of those that live in this overlay area. And I find that very interesting. I understand the density of the lots in Greenwood, but I don't understand why part of this overlay can't expand in that direction. I know that you spend a lot of time and effort on this. I greatly appreciate that. I know that it's not easy to make something work with all these layers, but I think you need to hear the people who are going to be the most impacted. And it's the people that are already in an area that is already what I would call overcrowded. Am I still there?
Yeah,
All of a
you're
sudden,
still there.
the
Yep, you're
picture
still
just
there.
changed.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So I would like to see a little work done on changing the overlay. I understand that it may not change some housing happening in this area. I just think we can't take the amount of housing that you're talking about in our area. We don't have the space. And I know, you say 1.5 cars, but that never happens. It ends up more cars and they're parking on the street. We too have cars that park on the sidewalk and nobody comes and tickets them. Nobody comes and checks. They don't drive down Cedar Street and check that cars are parked that have a permit. I can't tell you the last time I saw them come and check cars on Cedar. They had originally when they first put up the signs, but they don't anymore. So I just think that it's going to do more harm than good to our area, especially if you want to add close to 700 units beyond what's required by the state. Thank you.
Yeah, much, Jane. We certainly appreciate your comments, and I also lived at Cedar Garden. I lived at Cedar Gardens for a long time, and appreciate you as a neighbor, and Ms. King as a neighbor, and yeah, certainly know the traffic congestion. So, thank you.
But it's not going to help adding these number of units. It's going to make it worse. And that intersection down near the train station, what is happening now where people are so frustrated at that light and in line for so long that they run the light. I walk that route every day. They don't stop at the stop sign. They want to get across that track before the next train comes. They want to, it really is, the traffic has been impacted immensely by the buildings on Foundry Street and
right.
I walked the intersection by 7-Eleven, there where 7-Eleven and Murray and Gould and Albion all meet, and they don't stop. I'm
Right.
in the crosswalk.
Jane,
It's just overkill. We can't take more in this area.
thank you very much. We're a little bit over the 5-minute mark, and again, we do appreciate your comments, and I'll turn it back to Jim. So much appreciated.
Yeah, the next person I see is Don Dusenberry. Take 3, see if the audio issues have been resolved. Yeah, Don, we still can't hear you, so I'm going to pivot to Mike McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Mike McLean, Vice Chair of Town Council, 19 Fairmount Ave, just outside of the district, as currently proposed. I'd like to hit on a number of things. I realize there can't be major changes, so these comments are being heard, but we're not necessarily going to really vote on this until town meeting. There I will be opposing, and I'll be asking for 10 minutes for a more significant rebuttal. I've been dealing with this for about 2 years. When I came on the town council, Town Administrator Mayo dropped this on my lap, and I said, "What the heck is this?" And he said, "It's the law." I'm probably one of the only people other than Aaron who has attended one of the mass housing, presentations on this, classes on this, if you will. Young gentleman from Fitchburg was saying, if all this building goes on, costs are going to go down and everybody's going to fill up my empty mill buildings up here in Fitchburg. It doesn't work that way. I have always supported, doing the minimum. I think that, I want to make it clear that I don't think we've been listened to. People have been in front of the town council. We've had at least, I think, 4 councilors have significant questions about exceeding the minimum. Town administrator at one of the working group final meetings indicated he agreed with me that it should be the minimum, agreed with me that there probably should be a bit in Greenwood. What I had been proposing in Greenwood was about 1/5 of a minimum area, roughly 2 streets. You looked at a lot of different things. You looked at, different things in Greenwood that I wasn't even proposing. And let me make something clear. Julie indicated there were 3 circles. There were 3 circles. It's on our application. Each one of these circles is 500 acres. We had some acreage that could have come off of Melrose. We had a full 500 in Greenwood. I would suggest to you that you looked at these 500 acres very seriously. Did not look at any more than 37 acres from, I'm sorry, there's feedback there. If you can mute yourself, I'd appreciate it. 37 acres were looked at in Greenwood. I said, go a couple streets over, go to Madison, go to Greenwood Ave. You know, you get about 20 acres, and they're not unworkable. They're not overly dense. They're not overly large. They would have worked. But then they said, okay, if you don't want to do Greenwood, if you don't want to share what you say is the wealth and what some people like me think may be the shared pain, if you don't want to do that, just trim this district down and make it minimum. 40B is a huge issue here, huge. I'm tired of hearing about 2030 because we are already 100 or plus units in the hole on the 10%. What does that mean? Ask anybody on Stark Ave or Nahant Street. You know, ZBA has taken a tough stand. We've, as a town, we've said we make a 2% safe harbor. Mass Housing has already told us, no, we're not going to let you do that. So the amount of housing that we build in the market rate, which this is all market rate units. We don't know how many, how few, we don't know how long or how soon. But when these units get built, they work against the 40B. They work against our SHI, our subsidized housing inventory, because there's no moderate income in this circle. That's another problem. Some people have said, well, poo-poo it, say, well, you've got an affordable housing trust. I'm a member of the affordable housing trust. We're just setting it up. It has a whopping $760,000. And for anybody in Wakefield, they know that that's not going to build a heck of a lot of moderate income housing. We're going to do what we can with it. We're going to help some people, but don't think that's going to add significantly to our SHI, which is very important for 40B. So this works against 40B. Yes, we have some, room to move until we get to 2030, but it's 2024 and 2030 is going to come fast. We've just put 173 units on from Nahant Street. I'm sorry, from Tarrant Lane. I don't see that we've got the big amount of 40B growth unless Nahant Street gets built, which we're opposing, in the future. So let's also address a couple red herrings. When we look at 49A Chestnut, I'm a little tired of seeing the house. I have nothing against those people. That's not a 40A Section 3A project. We don't have one yet. It is a 3-unit as a matter of right under our current zoning, market rate, $600,000-700,000 per unit building. But it doesn't show you what we're going to see because we don't know what we're going to exactly see when we have a 4,000 square foot minimum lot size with 35-foot height. And as long as you meet the specs, you have a right to build. As a matter of right, makes me very nervous, which is another reason why I want this trimmed down to the minimum. If you look at streets like Gould and Cedar, when I proposed a couple of streets in Greenwood, yes, those streets are single family as opposed to general residence, but there are a ton of single families on Cedar. There are a ton of single families on Gould, and they could go to 3 or 4 units, and it's going to change. I think we're talking more about the character of the community than we are about this pseudo-economic development that I keep hearing about around downtown. And the fact that Greenwood didn't work, it's simply incorrect. It just wasn't looked at properly because 37 large lot acres were really the focus of the working group. That's fine. We'll find out what happens at town meeting. I hope everybody understands, though, there may indeed be a majority of the town council that opposes what has come up from the working group. The working group did have 2 planning board members. I didn't expect that the full planning board wasn't going to send this forward. But what I've heard is, well, we can always go back in the fall town meeting. I wish we didn't have to do that. I wish we had come in with the minimum district and that it just could have passed at the spring meeting. And I hope this does not. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Jim, could I comment on that?
Yep.
All right. So, Mike, we did look at your area in Greenwood and did discuss that quite a bit about adding that in. One of the reasons, again, this is why the working group, the people, we were tasked with looking at items and things like this. there were a lot of single family. It's a single family zone down there. So you would change something from a single family to a multifamily, which I think a lot of people would not take kindly to, of suddenly changing their character that much. Plus, that we just heard a lot about parking issues and traffic. If we had a multifamily zone down there, people would have to drive everywhere to go out to eat, to get groceries, to do anything. There's absolutely no option down there to walk to a store to get groceries. There's minimal places down there to go out to eat. So that would greatly increase traffic down there. So we hear from some people that say there's too much traffic. This would have contributed greatly to that. And that's, we looked at that. So you can continue to say that that would be a good option. But again, we looked at it, it just wasn't viable.
I understand your opinion, Matt. I just happen to disagree. 20 acres, 2 streets, very close to the train station. People drive anyway. People have cars down there, just like they have cars up around Wakefield Station. People drive to Melrose. There's a lot of restaurants down there. There are businesses in Greenwood that might benefit from this. And as Bronwyn said, this is more about getting people close to the train tracks so that they can walk to the train station. That's part of this, big part of this MBTA communities. And a couple of those streets, what you guys did is Aaron gave you a larger district and you started looking up the hill and saying, well, those are big streets up the hill. There's too much elevation. I wasn't just suggesting the elevation. I was suggesting a small, close to the tracks area to share either the wealth or the pain with, and that would help trim down this district around Wakefield Station that we're looking at, which could be trimmed even if we don't do anything in Greenwood. So again, I hearken back to the beginning. This is going to harm 40B. It's going to change the neighborhoods. Even this district without Greenwood should have been trimmed back to the minimum. That's absolutely the point that I think is going to be made and is going to hopefully cause us to fail a town meeting. So we don't need to focus on Greenwood. We should only do the minimum. What the Commonwealth is forcing us to do here is, in my opinion, not good. So I will do the minimum because it's legally required. Although I don't know that, you can cherry pick and say, well, we get over $1 million a year over 3 years in grants. But if you make that a 5-year test, it's less. So, maybe we, I don't know what the Attorney General is going to sue Milton over because the remedy is in the statute. You can't apply for certain grants. We got a grant on this. We got a grant to get Ezra, whose contract we paid for and who was gone by June 30th, and we haven't had him since. So, if they give you a grant only to comply with your own law, which, I don't think is a good law in the first place, that doesn't seem to be doing me much good. I don't know about you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Okay, the next person I see is Bill Marullo.
Yeah, 4 Carl Road. I've been a resident for the last 34 years. I still haven't heard what the benefits to the current residents would be with this program. They keep saying it's, the law, from what I understand, is just explained, I believe, that it just means that you're not going to be eligible for certain grants. So it's not the law. You don't have to participate. That's, like I say, my understanding. Right now, there's just going to be the traffic in this city, not town of Wakefield. There's 14 to 17 cars at 9 a.m. or 3 p.m. when you try to get through town. It's people are dodging, going around blocks to try to avoid long lines and stop lines. And this is right in this MBTA zone currently. So the big assumption is that people are going to use the T exclusively that live in these areas, and that's not the case. The T is an inefficient, high-cost form of transportation. There's less ridership. So where are all those people going to park, and where are they all going to go? They're going to go on the streets. The other issue I have is that a lot of these single, 2-family, 4 families to 4 families that were built with 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom per unit. Developers or investors are going to come in. They're going to overpay for these properties. They're going to gut them. They're going to add square footage, and they're going to go with 4 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms per unit. So now instead of having 2 to 4 people per unit, you're gonna have 4 to 8 people per unit. Again, there's no enforcement in the parking, 1.5 cars or 6 parking spaces per 4-family unit. So again, I don't see the premise that people are going to use the T. I don't see the premise that it adds to affordable housing. All it does is increase the density, the traffic, and makes the quality of life and the frustration of this town or city. Again, it's the city of Wakefield. It's going to be more like Everett and Malden soon at the rate that you keep developing and building in this community. So again, I would like to hear, it's been asked previously, what exactly is the benefit and why would the board be in favor of trying to find a way to make this happen? Taxes don't go down and we don't get towards the 40B housing allotment because you keep adding units. We never make the 10% requirement. So if the taxes aren't going to go down, you're never going to hit the allowance of 10% affordable housing. What is the point of all this other than to reduce the quality of life in this town? When I moved here, this was a great middle-class working town. It was urbanized. Now you're turning it into a city. And again, as somebody said previously, you have to ask yourself, taxes keep going up infinitum. The traffic is ridiculous. You have to plan your trips to certain destinations based on the traffic patterns of the time of day here. So I really don't understand, is it that, it's the increased revenue, tax revenue, or is it the planning board or the selectmen are so enthralled with working with developers? But I don't understand how you want to change the character and the culture of this town. Again, which it already isn't a town anymore, but now you want to make it into Everett or Malden. I just don't get it. I don't understand the point of this other than to comply with the state, which maybe you should push back and not comply with. And maybe you should forego the funding and say, we want to maintain the character of this town for the citizens and the people that paying taxes here. So like I said, I just don't understand the motivation to continue adding units to no end, increasing the density, creating traffic gridlock here, and reducing the quality of life in this town. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Murillo.
Theo, can I respond to that? So
please do.
So the goal here is for the working group to come up with a district that complies with what the state has mandated throughout Massachusetts in order to add more housing, because more housing is needed in the Boston area. We are not building anything. No housing is being mandated to be built. All that is being done is providing a zone for people to be able to build by right. So it's giving homeowners more rights to do with their land what they want to do. That's the ultimate goal here. I find it kind of
I don't mean to interrupt you, but that is not, a genuine, it's a disingenuous statement as far as I'm concerned. You're not giving landowners, like you said, what's going to happen is, I've seen this in other cities and towns. Okay. Yeah, landowner, they're going to sell their property to developers and investors that are going to build stuff that doesn't conform. They're going to multiply the number of residents per unit. And in the end, you can say you're doing it so that the residents have free choice or an opportunity, but maybe their opportunity and their choice is to stay with what they have. I don't see how this proposal gives anyone any more right. They can sell their property now. They can convert their property now with a permit from a 2 or 3 to a 4 family. But I'm telling you what's going to happen, because I've seen it in other towns. It's not the residents that are going to have the opportunity to convert their property. The investors and the developers are going to come in. They're going to take advantage of this proposal in your quest for more housing units and affordable housing. And the rents are gonna go up from 2,000 to 2,500 to 4,000 a unit. Okay?
All right,
And
excuse me, Bill.
unit is double.
Bill, can I finish? I mean, you keep saying our quest to build, it's not our quest to build anything. We're working to comply with what.
It's your quest. You said your goal, you were charged with this law, and you're gonna allow the residents the opportunity to do what they want with their property. You're imposing a law, the MBTA, the state is imposing this upon them. And it's a good theory, a policy, but in practice, what's gonna happen is this is gonna become so much more dense. Rents are gonna go up, and the quality of life for the current residents is going to continue to go down. So I'm asking you, as was asked previously, what is the benefit to current residents if they vote for this proposal? And how does that improve the quality of life for anybody in this town?
It will potentially add some housing to town.
How does that, that's people coming in from out of town. That's not adding anything for the people that are currently.
Okay, all right, well, I guess I can't answer your question because you want to restrict people from apparently coming into town in anymore. Is that, I mean, that's what it sounds like, so.
Yeah, exactly right. I think the traffic, the density, the taxes are high enough here.
Okay, all right.
More service, more resources, more traffic. Does that make sense? You see that argument?
All right, thank you.
I think the thing I would say, Bill, is that saying that producing more housing is going to increase rents, it's just one of the reasons we got to the point where we got to is we don't build enough housing as a state. We're in the bottom 10% of houses that are being permitted on a yearly basis, and we have a strong economy. So people want to move to the greater Boston region. And that's why we're seeing it from the state. We see it on Wakefield, you know, from our housing prices going up. We don't have enough supply.
Well,
so I'm assuming that people who have kids want to have enough houses so that their kids can actually stay in the town that they grow up in. And if we as a community say we don't want to have any new housing, then guess what? You can kiss the idea that your kids are going to be able to afford a house here. Goodbye. Because if the economy here continues to grow, and we don't build any new housing, it's just going to get worse. And candidly, this is not going to solve. This isn't going to solve the issue. And excuse me, Bill.
5 years.
Bill, respectfully, if you're going, please do not interrupt. We're listening to you. And I would appreciate if you listen to the answers that we're trying to give to you. If we pass this, it's one small step towards trying to build enough housing that we can actually address the housing needs that our greater region have. But if we continue to do nothing, the punchline is similar to the last 30 years, we're going to continue to see housing prices go up and to the right. So if that's something that is fine for everyone and everyone has a mutual agreement that our kids are basically screwed, that's a choice. But that is one of the reasons why the state is having this law. And one of the reasons why we're trying to come up with something that works for Wakefield. So we did not propose to have, as of right, 10 6-story buildings. We tried to come up with a way that we were going to allow for new housing to be developed to try to help address this housing shortage, but try to do it in a way that's thoughtful and that minimizes the impact. I'm not going to say there's Jimmy zero impact if we have new houses built, but we're trying to make it so it's as least impactful as possible, while also trying to address the fact that we have a gigantic housing shortage.
So in areas, can you give me an example where you've done this, that you've actually lowered the cost of housing and allowed people that their kids to stay in the
Hey,
town?
5 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're much appreciated. Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Marullo, and I appreciate the discussion, and I appreciate the issues raised, and the opportunities that and the challenges face, and the opportunities we have to consider changing some of the trajectory of traffic and housing development and prices. Jim, let's move on to RC, and then Vincent, and then John Sophia, or well, RC and then Vincent.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, Rick Stewart, 157 Salem Street. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I've been following this pretty closely, all the different meetings and stuff, and it's pretty obvious that from a town's perspective, town people, they're pretty much, looks like they're going to be against this. So let's just fast forward to the actual vote that comes in the spring. It gets voted down. I know something has to happen before the end of the year. You're going to come back in the fall with something else. What will the something else be if this fails in the Springtown meeting?
Honestly, I think if this were to fail, then
it's most likely going to fail. So what's plan B?
So we will cross that bridge when we get there.
That's not acceptable. That's not acceptable. You guys knew when the group was formed, it was to be in compliance with the state law. Fair enough. Nobody likes it. You have to deal with it. You had an opportunity to deal with it. You chose to go down these other avenues. And I've been hearing in all the different meetings, all this different stuff. Great. But that wasn't the mandate. The mandate was be in compliance with the law. And you guys went way beyond that. I've yet to hear a real legitimate reason why this is something everybody needs to do. I'm hearing a lot of valid reasons why we shouldn't do it. But you guys are stuck, and you're going to deal with this, and you're going to go to town meeting with this value that you have. Fair enough. When it fails, and most likely it will, you should already have a plan B. You're aware that overwhelmingly people don't want this. And to just say, well, we'll cross that bridge. Who's to say you don't come back instead of 2,500? You come back with 2,400 in the fall. Well, we took a little off. Then what happens?
Thank you, sir.
Any feedback on that?
Well, I think I will just say, let's. I think there's an opportunity for concrete, if concrete alternatives to be suggested, and
the minimum.
when
Just
what,
like it's
so
supposed to be. Do the state mandated minimum. Call it a day.
right.
Can I chime in too?
Yeah,
This is Erin Kokinda from the town of
Sure.
Wakefield. We have looked at other models here. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch your full name. I just see RC, but you know, there are models here that don't bring us right to 1696. That would be really hard to do, but there are models that may not fall in line with the bullet points that Jim kind of touched on, but that would meet the compliance. But that would be something that would have to be played around with a little more. So hopefully that answers your question.
Do it now. Why is this a problem? Meet the mandate for the minimum. I heard somebody mention earlier, well, we can go back to Greenwood after the fact, after this vote, and do something there. Do the minimum now, see how it works out. If something needs to change, Bring it up at a later town meeting. Why are we fighting this? People are saying universally, we don't want this extra. Don't do it. Beat the minimum. Or as
Okay.
close as you can get to it, and then come back later on and say, we need to do something else, whether it's in Greenwood or wherever, and go forward from there. We're sitting there meeting after meeting, and I'm listening to people say, no, 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 no. And I hear this group constantly saying, yeah, but we want, or we think. It's not just about that group of 6 or 7 people. You're getting the feedback saying this is not the avenue we want to go. Listen to what people are saying. Do the minimum and move on from there.
Thank you.
Why is that unreasonable?
And-
Understand why that's
Well, wait.
Theo,
Rick,
Theo, if I could comment on that again too. So,
yeah, but let me just we are now approaching 9 o'clock. So and we have a lot of other people who want to speak. I think Matt, after we respond to this, we need to consider extending this this public meeting, this public hearing to the 27th.
I think we can continue tonight. I don't see a reason why we can't
Okay.
go. So,
All right. All right.
But we can make a smaller district. But what's going to happen is, and it's not like we haven't listened to anyone, but there are so many competing thoughts on what should and should not be included, that as a group that was tasked with making what was best for a town, this is what we came up with. If we were to go smaller and then eliminate Chestnut Street area, when pushing it to the west of Wakefield Station, and we're going to get more into single-family zones, into people's lots that are really going to be, unhappy that you're moving this away from downtown. So again, the reason why this plan has come up is because we've looked at what seemed to be the best for a town. If it fails, and then perhaps another group will work on something else. That is basically it.
I'd be planning on Plan B. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. And I also want to say, it is not overwhelming that everyone is against this. There have been people that have shown interest in this plan. So until this gets to town meeting and his actual vote on it, I don't think we can take a straw poll on just the people that have voiced a negative opinion of this during our meetings.
I
do.
Wait, Jim, let me to that point. A lot of the survey results from the Vision 2030 and the master plan, I think, spoke to a lot of the positives and a lot of the outcomes that this district is trying to achieve. So I'll turn it back to Jim.
Yep. So I'm going to pivot over to Vincent. I know John Sophia has his hand raised, but you've already spoken prior to other people speaking. So before we go for second rounds, I want to make sure that we hit everyone on their first opportunity to provide feedback. So Bob.
Thank you, Jim. Bob Vincent, 22 Flanders Lane. I just wanted to point out a couple of things in the draft bylaw. Is that okay for me to do that? This will take 30 seconds.
Sure.
If you look at 190-117.1, that's your parking section. You refer to the current zoning bylaws of 190-37, but at the end of your sentence, you only reference subsections A through C. 190-37 actually goes A through I. The concern I have about you limiting that to A through C gives the impression that the rest of that subsection does not apply. That would be incorrect. For instance, section G deals with parking for handicapped persons. and that's a state requirement. So I don't think your draft bylaw should be limited to just subsections A through C of the zoning bylaw 190-37. So you might want to consider taking that A-C at the end of your 190-117-1. I would suggest you take A-C out of your bylaw. It's confusing and, in my opinion, inaccurate. The other one that I would draw your attention to is 190-116-2, where you define the word height. Your definition of height does not match what's contained in the current zoning bylaw under 190-4B. I think you're either going to have to rewrite it to include all of the definitional terms in 194B, or you might be able, I would talk to Tom Mullen on this, but I think you might be able to say the limitation on the heights of buildings shall not apply in the MCMOD, which features are in no way used for living purposes and do not constitute more than 20% of the ground floor area of the building. Right now, you have words such as chimneys, ventilators, towers, elevator shafts, silos, spires, but you don't have words such as skylights, water tanks, and bulkheads that are currently contained in the zoning bylaw 190-4B. I also find that very confusing and don't quite understand why the draft bylaw wouldn't contain the same language in the current Wakefield zoning bylaws. Those are just two things to draw your attention to that you might want to consider modifying your draft bylaw. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. We'll take a look at those. I will note, just for clarity, on the parking one, the intent was to exclude the sections besides A, B, and C of the existing parking bylaw, on the basis that there's some dimensional things in there that we don't think are appropriate for this scale. They're really more anchored or geared towards larger scale developments. But
you might
your point on section G is well taken.
Yeah, you can't exclude G.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll pivot. Thank you, Bob. I'll pivot over to Dave Stransky.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Yeah, this is Dave Stransky. I live at 3 Bennett Street. Kind of just offer a completely different perspective because listening to this call, I think I represent what everybody on here hates. I live in the 32-unit Wakefield Landing condo complex. It's across Main Street from Galvin Middle School. So it's a 32-unit, fairly new development in town, which is kind of on the larger, quite a bit larger end of what is being proposed under this effort. So I just kind of want to offer the perspective of, several people have asked, well, what's the benefit of this? I'm living that benefit. I started out in Boston in the rental market like everybody else and struggled for quite a while to find some place to purchase. And it's by denser housing development like this condo complex, I was actually able to find something to purchase and get into the terrible Boston housing market that we all know and love. In terms of traffic, yeah, I have a vehicle. I drive to work just because it's not close to public transportation. But I recently took a trip. I walked to the train station and rode the train into Logan. I walked to the grocery store. I walked to the restaurants on Main Street. The walkability of this town is wonderful for me. And so yes, I use my car, but I use it probably half of what I would use if I lived outside of this area that's being proposed here in this denser housing. I think another comment too, people have talked about taxes and things like that. And I find that kind of a facetious argument when we just approved a $250 million high school. So I don't really just complain about taxes, but we just approved something that's going to probably raise my taxes $1,000 a year. So I'm like, this is a rounding error in those kind of terms. So anyway, I just want to throw out a different perspective. I guess I'm falling apparently one of the few people on this call that's in favor of this, and it's because I'm directly benefited from this denser housing. So I appreciate the efforts. I know it's an unpopular opinion, but just wanted to offer a view from somebody who's actually coming out ahead on this. So thank you.
Thank you, Dave. And thank you for the alternative perspective for some of the other people we've heard today. I'll pivot over to iPhone. Please unmute and say your name and your address before you start providing feedback. Okay, I'm going to assume that whoever is listed with iPhone in their hand raised is. Oh, are you there?
I am, but I'm having trouble showing. Can you hear me?
We can hear
Can
you.
you? Okay, this is Eleanor Axelrod. I apologize. I dialed in on my phone and can't find the video button. Thank you for having this hearing. I had a couple of questions, but I thought the previous
Eleanor,
speaker
before you
raised
start going into that, could you just say your address?
19 Sheffield Road, and I actually moved from 9 Walnut Street, which is in the zone, the area to be zoned because it was too dense. So the previous speaker, I actually, I would say I'm supportive of, doing the minimum requirements. I love the idea of putting a new building in a space that's not being used or that's, taking over a dilapidated, worn down area. I think the previous speaker, his apartment building accomplished that unit because it's more than 10 units and has an elevator is also accessible. And those types of buildings actually give the seniors in Wakefield a potential place to downsize to. This was a point I brought up in the last session, was that there really is no place for seniors to go. And I just do not see my former 90-year-old neighbors, selling their single family home so they can move into a 4-unit down the street that's smaller and has stairs and comes with all the headaches of single family ownership, but with sharing it with up to 3 complete strangers. So I'll say that. I just had a couple of follow-up questions. When Aaron mentioned on Foundry Street that they couldn't do the this overlay because of the water surface issues, I guess why would a larger building be allowed to be built there versus the 4-unit? And then the second question was, I guess I'm trying to understand in the regs where, my understanding is the requirement is 15 units per acre minimum density. I haven't seen where it says that each lot only counts as 4 units. So I was hoping you could clarify that, because it sounded like, I'm a little bit confused. Like on the one hand, Foundry could have 10 units or more, and that could work in terms of density. But on the other hand, it sounds like you said it couldn't work because there's only credit for 4 units per lot. So that's it.
Yeah, I can respond to that. So, and thank you for the thoughtful questions. So, in terms of the area that Aaron's referencing, the state has identified areas that are near watersheds that the state will not allow you to count towards the minimum areas for compliance with the 3A laws. There are separate regulations related to what you can actually build as you're going through the building process, and that's routed through the Conservation Commission at the Wakefield level. But that's a separate process. Just for compliance with the 3A law, there's a map that the state actually issued and said this land you cannot count, regardless of what your zoning does or doesn't do with that land. With regards to the clarification in terms of how the law works for the lot, and I said you can only count for 4. So you could theoretically, if you wanted to, draw a zoning map around Foundry and say you could allow 10 units as of right, and then you could count 10 towards that minimum acreage. But the working group when we looked at it as part of the zone that you're looking right here, if that lot, those lots have been included, because the zoning that we're proposing only allows 4 units as of right, you only can take advantage of the lot as exists today times the 4 units. If that, but so that's why, I don't know if that helps clarify how that works, or if there's still confusion.
I guess I'm still confused. But I'll go back to the 3A map. I haven't even seen a good watershed map of Crystal Lake. It's not on the GIS sort of wetlands, floodlands mapping. It's not listed on the Conservation Commission map. So I guess I'm confused why that Foundry Street area is like what this new map is. I've never heard of that. So maybe Aaron, I could just email you afterwards to clarify, you know,
Absolutely.
what that is, because that's a new fact I wasn't aware of. And then I apologize. Jim, I'm still, I guess, a little confused. So can you, if you have a large abandoned lot, you know, I guess the question is, could you put a unit that's, you know, could you have more density there and meet the requirements of the law?
You could take, if you had a big lot and you zoned it and you said you could allow 10 or 15 or 20 units as of right, then you could have, and you know, as a separate lot, you could do that. You know, theoretically, if we wanted to, we could take any one of these, the sections on this map, and we could say 10 units as of right, and these with the lots that exist today, and that's how we get to compliance. We didn't think that was appropriate, because if you allowed 10 units as of right, the town would be ceding a lot of control that the town currently has through the special permit process.
I think we're going to be ceding a lot of control on the 4 units by right, and I would be concerned that developers are allowed to waive our bylaws. So, I mean, that's a huge concern. It's, but anyway, thank you for your time. I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. You know, it's new, and I would definitely err on the minimum, you know, meeting the minimum size, because I think there's an option to expand in the future if it's great, if it really works out. But I'm very nervous. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before we go back to anyone who's already provided comments, is there anyone else who wants to raise their hand and be heard for the first time?
Don Dusenberry is back, and
I'll try one more time. Can you hear me now?
Fantastic.
Fourth time's a charm.
Hey, all right. Well, that's about the 4th time. At any rate, I'm Don Dusenberry, 23 Parker Road in Wakefield. There have been a whole lot of good points here, and in particular, I don't understand why this isn't at least broken into 2 votes, one which is the minimum, and the other is what this working group thinks is best for the town. Add on that additional area. The other thing that I've looked at this law as best I can, and it talks about 15 units per acre and a certain number of units for the town. It doesn't talk about lot size that I could read. There's nothing to prevent anybody, and in fact, it will happen, to re-subdivide land in order to maximize what comes from a development. So if there's a large lot, there's no reason why it couldn't be subdivided and still comply with both the, excuse me, the 15 units per lot, and also any other guidance that we put on it about number of units, or 15 units per acre, and whatever we put on it for guidance of units per lot. So I don't find that as a compelling argument unless I don't understand what's going on here. We're talking about watershed areas, and yet we go within a few tens of feet of Lake Quantapowhat. How is that possible? It just, I can't find myself voting for imposing on people something that is unnecessary for them. It's not a benefit to a landowner to be able to redevelop their land, except to the extent that it harms a neighbor who chooses not to do that. So you're maybe allowing some people to get a benefit, but it's at the expense of the neighbors who choose not to have that kind of development in the land, on the land adjacent to where they bought their property before any of this happened. You've shown some pictures of buildings that you say would comply. Typically, those buildings are on much larger lots than 4,000 square feet. So the density is clearly going to go up. Traffic is not going to be mitigated by this. So I have not yet heard an argument for voting for this. I understand complying with the minimum, and I would support that. But I can't see doing more than the minimum unless you want to make it a second vote to see what the town wants to do in excess of the minimum. So thank you very much. I'm glad I finally was able to say something.
Thank you, Don, for persevering and making your comments. Jim?
So I think I'm seeing no one else is or no one else is raising their hand for the first time. So, Mr. Chair, if you want, we can have. I would propose that we allow the one gentleman who's raised their hand for a second opportunity to provide feedback to go, and then close this public hearing at this time, unless you disagree.
No, I'm welcome to that. Mr. Sophia?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak again. I have to say, I love to hear what Mr. Duesenberg had to say. I think it's heartfelt and accurate, and I think it's a kudos. I just want to say a couple things very quickly. There is presumably a pretty tight formula for that you use to arrive at the proposed overlay. In other words, you can fill in a bunch of parameters and you end up with something that either is above, below, or at the required mandate. But I think the real problem here is that the working group has imposed a whole bunch of their own personal subjectives. I say personal subjectives, which is synonymous with biases. And you pass that off as being roughly equivalent to the requirements of the mandate. And I thought it was extremely interesting listening to Mr. Lowry, because he essentially sounded like, I could be wrong, but to me, he sounded like his personal conjectures reflected something which is just as immutable as the state requirements. And I think that if this group really wanted to do the right thing, they would have come up with a few different choices. Let's say you put your biases on 3, or then you go the opposite way and then pick one in the middle. Because clearly, between the formula that the state requires and what you've proposed is an enormous amount of personal bias of what you think, what you feel, what you think is smart, what you think is best. I mean, these are the kind of things that people say, really? Really? Oh, you folks are all just smarter than us. Okay. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and thank you for letting me speak again. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sophia. Thank you to everyone who's spoken tonight. And yeah, and again to the working group and Aaron Kokinda and all the attention that is being given to this issue and this opportunity. in Wakefield. So we can close this public hearing now. And so do I need a motion to close it for tonight? No.
Actually, Mr. Chair, just a point of order too. I don't
Yeah.
think are we intending to at our next meeting to also hear the MBTA communities? Or are we,
that was my going to be my question.
'cause if we are, we can't close the
Right.
public forum.
No, we would continue it if you feel like it, if you want to continue it. I think we should.
I agree.
Yeah, okay.
We're getting a lot more feedback than we had in the past, and there's a lot more information coming through. And as we get closer to town, hopefully we can get some more people in here so they can be, they can understand the plan and they can vote a town meeting.
Very fair points, and I think so we will extend to our next meeting, February 27th. We'll open this hearing again at 7:15 on the 27th, and we'll reserve another 45 minutes at that point in time, so that we can continue for other business. And apologize for my phone.
Excuse me, Theo.
Yeah, Bill. Matt, sorry.
I think you've already scheduled a public hearing for that time already. So we need to continue this to another meeting and another time. So we'll have to set a time at that next meeting for this to be continued to.
All right,
And
fair enough.
if I was keeping track along the way, and it would be after, so self-storage would be first, and then marijuana would be second, and then the third would be MBTA communities for the next meeting. So just figuring out time there, would that mean it would be 8:45 or 9 PM start?
So how, I think we table this discussion to the 27th, and extend it at that point. So we can close this. We can wrap up tonight's discussion, knowing that we will continue it on the 27th.
So we will be continuing, we will be having the continued public hearing on that date. Or we will just be setting another time. I would recommend that we still have it go next time, but.
No, that's my understanding too, that we would continue the discussion. So I'm getting
point of
I'm
order.
getting a
I
little-
believe that if
yeah.
we're going to continue the discussion, we have to set a time.
Yeah.
And so on the 27th, we could have the MBTA overlay, and then we were talking about on the 12th having the other two, right?
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, no, I thought we were scheduled to have this public hearing continue on MBTA communities for 7:15 on the 27th.
Okay.
Okay, February 27th at 7:15.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, my mistake. I was getting the meetings confused. We already had the public hearings. So, all right.
Yeah. All right. Very, very worthwhile to clarify and be
Right.
straightforward.
So my mistake too, that's March 12th.
For self-storage and for the marijuana establishment overlay.
Understood.
Okay. All right. Ironically or sympathetically, a lot of detail in scheduling, a lot of detail in MBTA communities, and we cannot thank everyone enough for taking the time tonight. So we will move on to the next item on our agenda. Getting back to my agenda, is item 5, continuing our discussion of the preliminary subdivision plan for 154 and 158 Salem. And thanks to everyone related to that for going the distance with us. And Brian McGrail and Aaron sort of invite y'all to start this portion of the hearing of the meeting.
I guess I could start off. Thank
Sure.
you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Attorney Brian McGrail, representing the applicant L&L Development. Nick Leo is here with me tonight, and also Rich Williams is here from Williamson's Parages, who is our site civil engineer. This was a preliminary plan that was filed at your last meeting and discussed in some detail. And you decided to continue it in an effort to get some feedback, I believe, from the town engineer, Mr. Renault. Aaron was kind enough to seek some feedback from Mr. Renault. We received a letter from him late this afternoon with some feedback that we've had a chance to look at. We're going to need a little bit more time to look at it and kind of respond. So we're going to look to come back to another meeting. You're within your time frames to do that within the 45 days, so we have time to do that. But I guess is a prelude to coming back. If it would be okay for me to share the letter and we can kind of touch upon some things that he mentioned, because perhaps there's some things that will trigger with the planning board that you might want some additional information to what he's talking about too.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. I'm not able to share. Could you allow that, please?
There we go. Sorry, that was the last thing I didn't click. There you go. We should be able to now.
Thank you. So this is the directed to you, and again, it came in today.
Right.
So just kind of going through these quickly, and then Rich can touch on these two or confirm that the first thing he talked about is requested waivers. And he said the applicant's waivers for minimum right-of-way width and minimum pavement width. The engineering division recommends that the applicant provide a proof plan demonstrating a standard subdivision could be built on this property that meets the subdivision bylaw requirements prior to consideration of waivers. Board previously required a proof plan to a similar project at 291 Salem Street. So I think we talked a little bit about this at your last meeting. As you're well aware, when a subdivision is filed, which this is, it's in essence a by right event. As long as the applicant is not looking for any waivers, with all due respect to the planning board, and you know this, the planning board is not able to deny it. It's in essence an entitlement of the property owner to be able to subdivide their land as long as all of your rules and regulations are met. What we had shown on our preliminary plan is a reduced pavement. Instead of putting in the required 50 feet wide right away, we've requested a waiver of 40. And you did discuss this at your meeting, and the town engineer is touching upon this, and you asked us, well, can you do a 50, or are we giving you a gift of extra lots or more buildability by allowing you to do a 40? So what the town engineer is calling it is a proof plan. I call it a yield plan. Rich, are you there? Could you touch on this, that we do have the ability to do this, and we'll be able to provide the town engineer and the planning board a copy of the plan that shows that?
Sure. Good evening. Yes,
Rich,
we
you
have
identify yourself, Rich, for the record.
good evening, Rich Williams with Williamson's Parages. We have done a layout that it has a 50-foot wide way, and you're right, we touched on this at the last meeting. It would change the shape of the lots and make them a little less square, but it would be the same lot yield, and we can share that.
So we'll work with the town engineer on that, and we will also provide that to the planning board at the next meeting, because I think that's going to dictate the direction that you would give us on our definitive plan on how to go about this, as far as mitigating the effects and impacts on stormwater and on just aesthetics of the roadway.
Attorney McGrail, do you mind if I pause you for a second? Just
sure.
Because I want to make sure I recall at our Salem Street subdivision that we just had, we had this a back and forth at the very end of the process regarding approved plan and whether or not that was something that the planning board would be requesting. And I want to make sure that, and candidly, I'll defer to Mr. Lowry, who raised it at the end of that process. But I would like to make sure that we're providing you clear guidance as it relates to what our requirements are going to be, because I think there was a little bit of people got their wires crossed whether or not approved plan was required as part of what the planning board is requesting versus the town engineer. So I don't know, Matt, you seem to have a lot more thoughts on this when it came up on the last project. Maybe you can probably more eloquently explain what your perspective was.
In this case, we're talking not just a simple 4-lot subdivision. Well, it is 4 lots, but there's multiple zones there, so the unit count on this is going to be a lot greater than a normal 4-lot subdivision. In this case, I think I would want to see a by right plan just to make sure that it can go through. So it's a little bit different than the Nahant Street because it was basically a 2-lot. An actual by right plan would be overkill. In this case, depending on how many units we have there, it's something we need to look at.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Thanks for the clarification. Matt, is he referring to 291 Nahant Street or Salem Street? I don't know what he's on this. I don't know.
Well, it might be Nahant Street. I don't know, because that's where it came up that town engineer was looking for a proof plan on that. And we basically said you didn't need to do that. So
fine. Yeah, we anticipated we would have that you would want it anyways, and then he's raised it. You did raise it at the last meeting, so we'll present it to him for him to confirm that he agrees with us, and then we'll obviously present it to you and ask him to correspond with you in that regard too.
All right.
Okay. Could I go on to the next item, Mr. Chair?
Please.
Thank you. His next comment related to the public right-of-way comments. He references in October 13, 2009, the planning board was presented a preliminary subdivision plan for a similar project at this location. At that time, major concerns were raised with the safety of the proposed street as there doesn't appear to be adequate stopping sight distance at this location. Preliminary subdivision plan provided with the January 23, 2024 application doesn't address this concern and doesn't provide enough information to review the proposed site SSD, site distance. The applicant should provide plans showing proposed intersection with all dimensions and supporting calculations demonstrating it meets all applicable safety standards. So my memory, the last thing that I was involved in this property was back in 2012. The current owner was proposing a multi-family building on this, not a subdivision, which was going to be in essence, like a 5-story building, which isn't being proposed here, that had that site distance issue. And since that time, one of the applicants on this preliminary plan has acquired the property that was causing the site distance issue back in 2012. I don't know what he's talking about with 2009, but maybe I was involved in that. I just can't remember that far back. But in essence, we recognize that site distance because that's what came up during the zoning board process through the traffic advisory committee. But we have looked at this. We'll talk to him about it. We recognize the need to meet your requirements under your regulations for site distance, and we've looked at it and we can meet them. And that will be part of we'll discuss with the town engineer what he wants to see, but we know that we're going to have to conform with that when we file for a definitive plan. The next item, water comments. The town requires a minimum diameter of 8-inch in our new water mains. We proposed a 6-inch because there's a 6-inch in Salem Street. So this is a variant because the prior town engineer used to require that you match. So your regulations require 8-inch. On other projects that we did with Mike Collins when he was town engineer, if there was a 6, he wanted a waiver to make it a 6 and not require an 8 because he thought it worked better. But Mr. Renault is requiring an 8. We'll do whatever he wants. It doesn't matter to us. Maybe he doesn't know that there's a 6 in Salem Street, so we'll talk to him on that and get a clarification. Then he's suggesting that we would evaluate extending the water main through the project to create a water main loop with the existing main on Nablus Road. We'd be happy to do it if the town can provide us rights to do that with easements or whatever is needed. But that's, you know, if it's beyond our control, we're not required to, and we won't be able to do that. And then the next component is drainage, which, you know, with a preliminary subdivision plan, the drainage is very limited. We really don't get into that. Rich, you acknowledge these requirements, and we'll talk to the town engineer, but I think it's would be more applicable during our definitive plan when you have to submit your full drainage studies. And we're gonna have to go through Conservation Commission approval also at the same time. So does that sound correct, Rich, if you could confirm?
You are correct, yes.
Yeah. So that, you know, that's the memo. I think we appreciate the memo because it's kind of, you know, and one thing he didn't mention that we're going to talk to him about that your board mentioned was sidewalks. We talked about, and then crosswalk opportunities that weren't mentioned, if there are any at all, or if they would be appropriate. So we plan on putting that on our list and telling that was something that was discussed with the planning board, and it'd be good to get some comments from him in that regard also. So that's where we are with this. We're, you know, I think what we will request is when the board is ready tonight, this would be continued to your next meeting, where we would have an opportunity to have these discussions with Mr. Renaud and bring back appropriate feedback so that we can get feedback from you on a direction to take with our definitive final.
That's certainly welcome. So we will continue this to February 27th. And we'll say 5 after 8, give a little cushion. We'll make it even. We'll say 8 o'clock. So.
Yeah, we really don't need to set a time for this.
Okay.
So it's not a public hearing, so we can do it whenever we have
Sure.
time.
No, understood. All right. Thank you very much. Very helpful. All right. So item 6 is an A&R plan for Old Nahat Street and 0 Old Nahat Road and 79 Old Nahat Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's mine also. With me tonight on that is John Ogren from Hayes Engineering. And this is I think a fairly straightforward A&R plan. I'm going to, if I may, share my screen in that regard.
Sure.
Thank you. Just find it. Or actually, John, do you want to do it? Do you have it handy by chance?
I do. I can do.
Wait, take over. I'll handle it when you put it up. Thank you. Can you blow it up a little bit, John? Great. So this is a fairly straightforward approval not required plan. It involves lot 2F, which you see, which has frontage on Old Nahat Road. It also, to an extent that we're going to be adding land, involves the property at 79 Old Nahat Road, which has frontage on Old Nahat Road. It also has frontage on Pheasantwood Drive. Pheasantwood Drive was a subdivision that went in sometime in the 80s. And basically what we're doing here is we're taking a couple of small pieces from which was the vacant lot, if you will, and the remainder of which will be lot 2F. And we're adding those pieces to 79 Old Nahat Road. The reason we're doing that is to just really clean up 79 Old Nahat Road. We're looking to give it proper frontage from Old Nahat. Now it has frontage on both streets, to add that little triangular piece. And there is a note on the plan that 2E is not buildable, is to be added and become part of 79. And then we're also adding just 10 square feet, which is lot 2D, which John has highlighted in red, to deal with a setback. It's currently 24.4. If someone wanted to say that the legal frontage of this was Pheasant Wood, the rear setback is 25. So we're just cleaning that up. I've met with the building inspector on this, and this is what he has requested that we do, because at the end of the day, lot 2F remaining is a buildable vacant lot. So that would have 12,011 square feet, and it has total frontage after we take 2E away of 101.80, which meets the frontage requirement. So the simple component from this, from an A&R perspective for the planning board, is everything here meets frontage on a public way. Lot 2F meets it on Old Nahant, and 79 meets it on Old Nahant and on Pheasant Wood. So, and John, if you could show the detail, because where these lots are so small, we thought it would be helpful, and John included a detail of both of these so he could dimension them properly. So if somebody wanted to look at them, they could see them more clearly. And that's why we put this detail on the right, defining the new lot lines as is required by your board.
That's very helpful and very straightforward. Any comments from the rest of the board? Yeah.
Just I'd like to make a couple comments.
Sure.
Thanks for explaining it, because I was a little bit confused about how that lot was going to work and pulling this all together. Are there any issues with where that other, like if you zoom into where the red line is in the middle, where the property line is? Are there any issues at that lower corner? Or is there anything else where you added the detail? I didn't get a chance to go by the property at all. Is there any issues with like slope or water on the site or anything that we don't know about?
No, I mean, there's, I think John can confirm, but there's no wetlands here. No wetlands on either lot, correct, John?
Yeah, there's no, this property wouldn't come under jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, like I said, I didn't get a chance to go by the lot like I usually do, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
like you're concerned, Bill, with maybe uplands or something like that, or,
Mm.
yeah, there's nothing that would be applicable here.
Okay, thanks.
So at the end of the day, both lots are gonna be entirely conforming, on all fronts, no pun intended.
Okay. All right. So no other questions from board members? All right.
Well, I assume this is gonna lead to another A&R after this, is what it appears, or
No,
is that what you're going for? No?
no, what would we be doing about it? Am I missing a buildable lot here?
I don't know. I'm just, they seem a little odd little
It's
items, that's all. So,
No, we're not. Nope, it's, that's not the plan.
okay,
What we're gonna do is we're just going to, clean this up, because we wanted to make sure it had the proper frontage on, Old Nahant.
Yeah, existing 79 would only have, over here in our note, once we add these pieces to 79, it will only have 22,434 square feet, so it wouldn't meet you wouldn't be able to subdivide that into two lots. Wouldn't have the area.
all right, I'm just wondering why you'd rather have, more frontage on Old Nahant, that's all.
Really to clean it up, just to make sure that we had that frontage. Once I sell that vacant lot, I can never get that back, so I wanted to make sure I had frontage on all fronts here. And any setback, so now 79 is totally compliant under the bylaw, and so is 2F, no question about it.
All right,
I was scratching my head a little bit too, trying to figure it out, so thanks for explaining.
All right. All right, a motion to approve? Do we need?
Yeah, can you pan to the title of this? All right. I'll make a motion to approve the plan of land, 0 Old Nahat Road, Wakefield, Massachusetts, prepared by Hayes Engineering, dated February 5th, 2024.
A second?
Thank you.
I'm gonna
Do you want
make a motion to endorse the plan.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you, Matt.
To endorse. And Bill seconds. All in favor? Kevin? Come back to Kevin.
Yes.
There. All right. Thank you, Kevin. Jim?
Yes.
All right. Matt?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Terrific.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Aaron, if I could, Mr. Chair, if you would mind at some point tomorrow signing the application and get it to Aaron and Aaron, and that way I'm able to file the appropriate notices with the town clerk as required by law.
Sure, I'll have to do that. Yeah, I've got it. So will do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. All right. And all right. Our last item of the agenda is items not anticipated by the chair. We've tackled my one item, which was scheduling the meeting for the marijuana establishment overlay district, the hearing. Do other board members have any other items for discussion?
Just not a discussion, more just a observation from tonight's public forum. And just thinking about this, and I know we've talked about structure and how to figure out timing so everybody gets a chance to speak. I was wondering if we do what a lot of other boards that I've been in front of as an architect do. And yes, they have an opening statement as Jim presented. Then as the comments come in, and Theo, that would just be run by you or Jim or whoever wants to facilitate the meeting. But there's no other planning board comments back. There's no rebuttals. There's no comments back. And I know sometimes that's difficult because so much work has gone into this and it's hard to share all the other options that were on the table along the way. And it's sometimes it's hard to not be defensive. And I think the team did a really good job tonight with, keeping it cool. There was a lot of like, you do this and the board does this and all you want is this and bias and all that crap that was just thrown out there, which really hurts the, moving forward. But my suggestion would be is that we don't comment on any of the public comments, that we wait to the end. That gives everybody a chance. So there's no extra time on our part. And at the end, there's just a summary and a follow-up and it's done. I just think it might be a better way to run the next forum, but just a thought.
But then not answering questions in real time, saving those to the summary at the end.
Yeah. So and Kevin, I'm not sure if you've been in front of a lot of boards before, but even Melrose, a lot of boards don't even comment back. They just take everything in and they'll say, we'll review it and get back to you at the next meeting. I think we could have a quick summary at the end. And we know, it's hard. It gets lost a lot, I think, in the public forum, especially, that as a board, our goal is to bring this in front of the public so they can understand what they will be looking at town meeting. That's really the goal of these forums. So, yeah. I don't know, just a thought again, if we wanted to allow more people to speak and maybe get through it quicker.
Well, I'll comment on that. Unfortunately, this is not a forum at this point. It's a public hearing.
Right, hearing, yeah.
And in this case, there's not a lot, we've heard a lot about changing the zone. We can't obviously do that. So we can't present multiple maps. That's not the way the process is set up. So, and basically we should be taking testimony on whether we should or should not approve this at town meeting. That's basically all we're going for at this point.
Right.
All right.
So I agree, probably we should comment less, especially, probably me. That's fine, but we do need to answer some of the questions that are asked. But in the end, just realize that there's not a lot that can be changed at this point. It can be changed on the floor of town meeting, or it can be voted up or voted down. And I'm fine with that, so.
Right, so if we had somewhere in between, the compromise could be that we don't comment on any of the individual comments, because I would guess and say 70 to 80% of them were the same answers back from us. But at the very end, when the comments are done, that Jim or somebody from the committee, Matt, you, summarizes in the last 5 or 10 minutes and responds to those common questions. I just think we could make the process shorter, which would allow more people to speak in the time frame that we're setting. Just something to consider for the next meeting to facilitate.
I think it's a good idea, and I think also a good point to be making at the outset is, again, what can and cannot be changed at this moment, and so that, I think, will help direct people's comments to what's in front of them, and can actually lead them to think about the discussion at town meeting. So, all right. That we'll try it. That sounds like a good idea. Thank you. And I will also echo Bill. I think these have been difficult conversations to have and to receive a lot of feedback, and it's really because we're all engaged with everyone who comes to the public hearing, and the Q&As before, wrestling with these thorny issues and threading the needle and putting these various pieces together, and we fortunately or unfortunately have had a longer time to sit with all of this and to understand all the trade-offs that we've gotten to in this proposal. So so again, it's another way of saying thank you and appreciate everyone's sort of patience and the value of the public hearing and the process. So, and any other items at this point? It's 9:54. So, all right. With that, I'd welcome a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make
So
a motion
moved.
to adjourn.
All right. Thank you, Bill. And Jim, we'll take you as a second. Terrific. All right. All in favor? Matt?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Yes. And myself, yes. And again, thank you to everyone for all of your continued commitment and hard work to the town.